Thank you, Ben. I liked Ben coming out forthright telling you the value of Farmers Union insurance to your organization. That sounded as wonderful, Ben, as a State Farm dividend projection. They've been bragging about that here for the last week or two. I would welcome you all to your 57th annual convention. It's always a privilege for me to report to you about your Farmers Union insurance program. This has been my 10th report to you as your state manager. I always like the opportunity to express our thanks and appreciation to all of you policyholders and friends, to all of the fine agents group and their wives, our managers, our board of directors, staff, and distinguished guests. This is a working convention, as the mayor and your director on the response and your president mentioned, and our Farmers Union agents are a part of that working group. They're here to help you work. So I'd like all of the insurance workers and their wives to please rise for a well-deserved appreciation. I'm not just trying to see who all is here, but I think you deserve a good hand. That is a good share of the group this morning. I just say, Vice President Hawkins, those are the people that make things happen. Our managers have great responsibility. They have the responsibility of production. And they recruit and train and supervise over 60 agents in this region. Their job is to make Farmers Union insurance grow. They serve you policyholders and represent the best interests of the public and the agents and the companies. So it's my pleasure to introduce them this morning. From our Eastern District, one, Gerald Gary. And if you want to hold, just why don't you boys keep standing there? They're all good-looking gentlemen. You get a good look at them that way. District 2, that's the Central District, Cliff Bailey. In our Northern District, 3, Marv Lorenzen. Our Western District, 4, Bob Klein. He's not new to the Dakotas, but he's a little new to us yet. And our Southern District, District 5, Gilbert Burchard. Thank you. I wanted to introduce our branch claims manager, but he didn't make it to the stage. Is he? He's in the audience here someplace. He's a bashful type, Don Podrosky. Take a bow. Thank you. And it's always very gratifying to me to have the cooperation of our out-of-state dignitaries to come and share this convention with us. Now, our agency vice president, Ray Hawkins, will address you in a few moments, so save him, but I would like to introduce his boss. We're very happy to have his wife, Phyllis Hawkins, with us this morning. She doesn't get a chance to come to South Dakota very often. Thank you, Phyllis, for coming. We have a national board member and a regional manager of Montana with us. He's a former state manager of South Dakota, Bob Kuderna and Ann. We're real happy to have you folks with us. And another national board member, regional manager of the Rocky Mountain region, former claims manager from South Dakota. It's good to have these alumni here. Lauren Swenson. Have the regional manager from Minnesota, Floyd Borghorst. Floyd, let's see. And I see our crop hail manager there from Cedar Rapids, David Gabriel. You take a bow, Dave. That's all I see at the moment. I hope, have I missed any out-of-state dignitaries? Okay. Well, I'm expecting a couple of special account representatives from National Farmers Union Property and Casualty Company. Orland Wiebert, Paul Harper, not present. Okay. Well, 1972 has been a great year for us. And this is despite a lot of government confusion and uncertainties, and despite the slow recovery of the economy. So we're real happy with our report for 1972. We were able to establish new records in sales and protection, and our premium is ahead of last year by $450,000, which we think is real good. That's about 11% increase. We've continued our policy of providing the best service by expanding as fast as possible under a planned, financially sound program. And we have added another district in our state. That little agency brochure that you received as you came in this morning shows the 5 districts, all of the service centers on the back, and other pictures and information that we hope will be of interest to you. Since the last convention, each district manager has added 1 additional agent to his district. And number 4, District 4 out in the west, the Black Hills area, has added 2 additional agents and an additional office already. So we're looking for big things for the rest of the year. All of our agents and their wives and these offices are a very important part to their communities as well as to our state organization. We're proud of the fact that Farmers Union Insurance is among the largest taxpayers of insurance companies operating in our state. Just your business generated through this agency, Farmers Union Service Association of South Dakota, has resulted in premium taxes of over $80,000 to your state of South Dakota. We know this isn't enough to reduce your property tax, but it all helps a little. We're proud of that $80,000. And you will note in your Farmers Union book, this little brochure, that the promotional fees that your president mentioned that help your state Farmers Union organization and the Farmers Union name fees to your national organization have reached a new high of just about $60,000. So we think this is a big help to your organization. We're very proud of that fact. This is certainly a good reason for each one of you, all members and policyholders, for urging your city neighbors to help us in this promotion. We need your help. We need the help of all members and policyholders to help promote Farmers Union Insurance. Don't just leave this job up to your agent. He's doing the best he can, and he sure appreciates your help. Our growth also depends on how you manage your personal affairs. It's a big help to us if you make sure that your family doesn't get injured in an accident or a fire or have property destroyed. So we'd like you to please make it a goal of every member of your family to make your home and your farm and your drivers the safest anywhere. Because there are 2 very painful experiences to our Farmers Union agents. And one is when their policyholders suffer. They have a very personal interest in their policyholders. And the other one is when a Farmers Union member buys life insurance from another company, one of these other companies that's in favor of limiting and curbing the family farmer or even forcing them off the land. Because Farmers Union Insurance's concern is for people, and it's not just limited to farm people. Your organization has been praised many times for its influential participation in problems and ideas that affect all people. The number one commitment of Farmers Union Insurance is helping you build your income, not just merely reducing your insurance premium, which we make every effort to do. Our basic philosophy is concern for people. We think that that's a very good philosophy. Now, in these days of high inflation, we sometimes think that everything costs too much. And I think that's true. I think it does. And we hear this even about Farmers Union insurance premiums. But we are happy because only a small percentage of people do blame Farmers Union insurance for increased costs. Most people have become to realize that our small increase, which has been very small over the past few years, is due to the increased frequency of accidents. That's the big one. The accidents increase tremendously each year. And, of course, the inflationary items that your Farmers Union insurance premium is used to buy has gone up tremendously. I'd just like to mention some examples of that. As you know, the Consumer Price Index has increased on an average of 3% over the past 10 years. The last couple of years, considerably more. But compared with that 3% increase per year, liability claims went up 10% a year. They increased 10% a year. Higher jury awards, so on. Repair bills have gone up 11% a year compared to this 3% normal cost. And property crime has gone up 15%. If I want to mention doctor and hospital costs, you think of a figure. They're twice as big as these figures that I've mentioned. But these are the things that make it so difficult to hold your insurance premium down. And probably the most frightening of all to us is the increased fatalities on our highways. They increased from 203 fatalities last year here in South Dakota, where we had the wide open spaces that our out-of-state guests appreciate so much, less traffic, no increase in population, and still, from 203 people killed on our highways last year, this has already moved up to 217 this year. So you can see that this takes a considerable larger amount of insurance premium. Now, insurance rates could be reduced, hold the line and reduce them a little more if our roads were improved a little more. And there's been a big improvement in roads in the state. Huron can't brag too much about that. Even our good mayor this morning didn't mention that we have any four-lane highways out of here, or we're not on any interstates. But as the roads are improved, insurance premiums should go down. As automobiles are made safer and more durable, it'd have a tremendous effect on your insurance premium. Now, they've been improved a little in '73. The bumper will stand another 2.5 miles per hour without having a total loss to your vehicle. But there's some immediate help that could come right away through no-fault auto insurance. Now, your Farmers Union insurance supports the principle of no-fault auto insurance. And they've asked Congress to enact legislation that's patterned after the bill that was pigeonholed just 2 months ago by a very close vote, 49 to 46. So just a couple of votes would have changed that so that the national would have a standard no-fault program that the states could adopt. Your own state policy program recommends that South Dakota legislature enact a no-fault auto insurance. So to us, it's no longer a matter of if no-fault insurance, it's a matter of when. We hope that we've planned a special program for you later this evening. We hope that you will all attend and discuss and get more information about no-fault insurance. We'll have a good film from one of our friendly competitor companies, the only company I know that has spent the money and the research to put out a film on no-fault insurance. I believe there's some movie film and some slides, and Mr. Brandeis of the St. Paul companies will be here to answer any of your questions. He heads up their Western Auto Division. So hope that you all be here so that you can get first-hand knowledge, and then it's up to you. We hope then you'll tell your own local legislature your feelings on this and see if we can't, if you think it's good, see if we can't get it through right away at the next legislature. I don't think that South Dakota should necessarily always be the last state to adopt progressive legislation. But we think this would reduce your premiums immediately. Now, I usually share a little life insurance philosophy with you in my report. And this morning I want to try that a little bit differently and see if you may retain a little more information than if I just stand here and tell you about it. We have a new film. It's a very brief film, but I think you'll appreciate it because it's about the priorities and importance of insurance. It shows Mr. Chuck Gaines, who is a nationally renowned authority. He is taught in major universities in our country, and I hope you'll find it enlightening and more interesting close to this report. My cameraman is all ready. If we can just dim the lights, why, we'll entertain you with this film for the next 5 minutes.
Phi Beta Kappa, has spent his entire career in life insurance. A successful salesman, a home office executive. He has taught life insurance at 2 major universities. Mr. Gaines is now Vice President with Research and Review Service of America.
There is one financial problem common to almost every American home. That is the problem of allocating money to pay the various forms of insurance premiums.
But I was impressed with that short film showing me that we all do this in the reverse order, all right. We don't protect our income enough. We don't protect our earning power through things like disability, not only death, but disability. We all think about protecting our pocketbook with our car and our home and so forth, instead of protecting our family. So I thought that film did have a pretty good message, and I hope that you'll take that message home with you and tell that to other people. Our agency vice president came to Farmers Union Insurance from the Home Insurance Company, one of the very big companies in the nation. And he came to us as a very knowledgeable and able crop hail underwriter. A few years later, he was appointed as manager of Farmers Union Insurance's crop hail department in Cedar Rapids. And about 3 years ago, he was again promoted to his present position of agency vice president of Farmers Union Insurance Companies. He's in the Denver home office in that position. Today, we're fortunate, he came direct to us from a 2-week seminar in New York where he was rubbing shoulders in that meeting with presidents and managers of the biggest companies and nearly all of the companies in the United States. So I'm sure he's extra full of knowledge and enthusiasm today. So, ladies and gentlemen, your National Agency Vice President, Mr. Ray Hawkins. Ray?
Thank you, Cliff, President Ben, Board of Directors, delegates, and friends. I was a little apprehensive earlier. It's always risky this time of the day to have any event where you turn all the lights out. You wonder where the people went when they turned them on. But the ladies and gentlemen with the hats back there kept everyone in, so we're gratified that you all stayed. It's a real beautiful morning. I'm sure you've observed that, even though some of you may not be this alert. This morning I was out in front of the hotel looking to see if anyone had stolen the tires off of my car, and I understand that doesn't happen in Huron. But anyway, two psychiatrists was there, and everything's very complicated for them. This fellow come down the street and says, "Good morning," and one of the psychiatrists said to the other one, "What do you suppose he meant by that?" And I think maybe that some of our insurance reports, you're not really with it this morning. I see that, so I'll be governed accordingly. Insurance reports tend to be monotonous at best. However, you do have a very deep interest in what your insurance companies do, and we're very anxious to let you know how we are doing, because after all, if we do not please you in the way we perform, we have failed. It's real happy for me to be here for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that I represent so many people, and that we have more than 700 agents. We have some 50 regional, state, and district managers, in addition to all the many people in our home office whose primary function is to serve you and people like you in the many states which we come from and which we serve. President Ray Novak would have liked to have been here, but as Cliff indicated, he has been gone for 2 weeks, and you can only conclude from that that it's easier to spare me out of the home office than it is the president of the company. I felt a little bad to hear that, but I guess that's a logical conclusion. I am pleased that we have 3 board of my directors present. President Ben, of course, serves on the insurance boards, and the regional or state managers from Montana and from Rocky Mountain. I think they're here to make sure that everything goes well. It says something for South Dakota, I believe, in that both of these gentlemen have served at one time or another in South Dakota. I don't know, Ben, if that colors the complexion of our board or not, but I think it's a plus. We've had an excellent year in 1971 in your 3 companies. This report is more a report on how well the 700 agents have done, because without them, we would not be here. They're the ones that write the record, so indeed it is their report. They service more than 300,000 individual and business policies that make up our 3 companies. And our companies stand or fall on their efforts, because if they don't sell the coverage to you folks, I'm sure that many of you would not buy. This makes the job here reporting to you exceptionally pleasant, because 1971 was good for us. Compared to 1970, sales last year in our life company was up $1.3 million of premium in life company, or a 17% increase. In our property and casualty company, sales were also up 17%, or $3.4 million, because of the larger premium base. Standard Company, this is a relatively new company, auto specialty company, premiums were up 56%, or $500,000. Well, sales in themselves is not enough, because you need profit in order to be able to sustain the losses that we have when the winds blow in South Dakota, or if it hails in North Dakota, and the other things that affect the financial status of your companies. We need years of profits. Here again, through the careful underwriting and selection that your agents have done, we were able to increase the surplus in the property and casualty company $2 1/10 million. $500,000 of this was contributed surplus to protect our financial standing as far as ratio of liability to premiums, but $1 6/10 million was contributed or was earned surplus. That's important with this extremely rapid growth that we've had. It's the best growth period in the 30 years of history with your Farmers Union insurance companies. It also had a very important effect on the parent organization, the National Farmers Union. Cliff has already commented, and as did Ben, that the state farmers unions participate a small portion on a percentage of the premium, and the national organization does likewise. Last year, the National Farmers Union earned $259,000 in their form of commission because of owning the companies. And we wish it was more than that. As we grow, that will increase. So when you pay your premiums, a portion of it goes to the state and national organizations, which is as it should be. Payment to the state farmers unions totally, not South Dakota, I don't have the figures for your state, and there was $174,000 in 1971, an increase of some $27,000. Well, now I'll confess that even at this time in the morning, I get excited over these figures because you have good growth, you have good profit, you need to have good people, and we have evidences of that here. We think that 1972 will have nearly as spectacular a growth, but more importantly, we will have a more mature, a more professional agency force than we have ever had. During this year, we've had more people involved in training, in-house training from the company training programs, and outside training through industry courses that are available. This business of ours has become so complex that it's necessary that our agents maintain their skill. They cannot stand still because the business changes so rapidly. 3 weeks ago, we had 11 district managers at a school for 6 days of intensive training. You may wonder how you can take the time to do the training. Everyone is busy. How you spare the time from your field work or your agency work to take 6 weeks, 6 days, or 2 weeks as some of these courses run for this study. It's a little bit like the woodman who was cutting down a tree and he had a very dull axe, and some fellow observed and said, well, if you'd sharpen your axe, you would get the tree chopped down much quicker. And he says, well, I can't because I have to chop down the tree. So we do have to take a bit of time to sharpen our axes, and our men are doing that, men and ladies. So as our agents here in South Dakota and throughout Farmers Union insurance lands grow in their professional competence, so have our companies. Your companies now insure not only many hundreds of thousands of individual families, but also some of the giant cooperatives that serve farm families in the fields of marketing, supplies, electric and telephone service. Farmers Union insurances now insure, the last I heard was 20, and maybe it's higher, of the 24 REAs in Montana. Nearly all of the REAs in North Dakota, and an increasing number in Nebraska, South Dakota, Colorado, and Wyoming. We provide insurance coverage for the affiliate cooperatives of the National Farmers Union Central Exchange, and the Farmers Union Grain Terminal Association, Great Plains Supply, and part of the giant $21 million terminal at Duluth Superior, and many others. These are big accounts, and we're proud that our companies were chosen by the professional insurance managers that handle the insurance buy-in for these big cooperatives, and it does a lot to build your companies and to strengthen your companies. However, we need to earn the right of their continued patronage, and we expect to be able to do so. But more importantly, our primary task is to serve you and other people like you, the members of the Farmers Union in the various states, for providing up-to-date comprehensive coverage for the individual. We are primarily a personal lines company. It's still our prime objective and our number one priority. And one way that we can provide this service is to hold our costs of doing business to an absolute minimum, consistent, of course, with good service, and to constantly seek means of bringing these fixed costs even lower. Last year, the cost of doing business in your companies, what we call home office administrative expenses, this is to take care of the people that issue policies, pay claims, and other administrative expenses, was down to 11%. This is substantially below comparable companies performing the same kind of services. It represented a 1% decrease from the previous year. So we continually strive to reduce these costs. So much for the report on the past. I think the past is merely to let you know that we are doing all right, that their companies are financially sound and they are growing, but that won't help us unless we use that as merely a base on which to build the rest of 1972 and the future years. We're interested in your deliberations here. We're interested in improving your future insurance coverage also. Presently under study in Denver with some help from some of the various states. We're studying the no-fault insurance plans. Some have been passed in a few states, and you understand you have one pending here in South Dakota. We're also studying the national bill recently referred back to the committee in the U.S. Senate. About all we can say at this point with so many plans is that we support the concept of no-fault insurance as we support the concept of a national health insurance plan. We feel that national health insurance for all of our citizens are important because we in the insurances believe, along with you at this convention, that these new concepts will mean a better and more secure life for all of us. So we solicit your support and your suggestions in these matters and in any others that you may have that will let us to better serve you. It's been an extreme pleasure to participate in your convention. We wish you the best in your deliberations.
And directors of the South Dakota Farmers Union and my fellow members of the Farmers Union, it's a great pleasure to come to South Dakota. For my many friends here, it's good to come to the state which is the home of the next President of the United States. Be worth it for that alone. My talk to you this morning will actually be, I think, should properly be said to be a follow-up on Jim Patton's great talk to you last night. I thought it was a wonderful talk, and I actually will just expand a little on some of the things he said, I think. Jim Patton talked to us last night about how we're coming under the rule of a powerful military-industrial complex. A handful of powerful people truly are ruling our destiny. How do they do it? There's so many of us and so few of them. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the 10 myths that deceive us and divide us. You'll recognize all of them because they're repeated over and over in the mass media. Our leaders repeat them in one form or another. They do it to divide us. You heard Brian Vance last night talk about pollution that threatens us, and he said, it's something I can't do anything about. It's something you can't do anything about. It's something we can do something about. And he talked about the necessity of getting together. 10 myths. Myths is not quite the word either. That's a euphemism.
I had to look the word up, euphemism, about the first 6 times I ever saw it. I never could remember what it means, but a euphemism is a nice word to say something that's not so nice. It seems we have nice labels for everything in our society. We talk in Vietnam about protective reaction, sustained reprisal, surgical strike, but we never talk about blood and death and burned babies and homeless people. These are 10 lies that deceive and divide us. I'd like to call them the devil's 10 commandments. What are they? Number 1, the myth, the lie is farmers don't know what they want and they can't get together. I hear it over and over. Ben, when Clifford Hardin, the Secretary of Agriculture, some of you heard him come to our convention. His first public appearance after he took office was at the Farmers Union convention in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And he got up before us and he said, you know, if farmers could just make up their minds and if they could get together, we can bring a new era of agriculture in this country. He was repeating the myth, the lie. Tony Deschamps went back to Washington after that, and he was shaking his head about it and wondering what could be done to dispel that lie. And he called up other farm organizations in Washington. He found 3 leaders in town, Fred Hinkle of the great Mid-Continent Farmers Association, the old Missouri Farmers Association, and John Scott of the Grange were in town, and he said, fellows, let's get together and talk about getting together. They met down in Mr. Hinkle's hotel room in Washington, and out of that grew the National Farm Coalition. I had the good fortune to attend the first meeting, and there were 17 farm organizations present. Even the Farm Bureau was there. And Tony said, let's talk about those things we can agree on. Surely there is enough that we can agree on that we can come out with a coalition program. And so they began talking. I must say, sadly enough, the Farm Bureau did not attend any more meetings. But other organizations joined that, and you know the story. 33 farm organizations, general farm, cooperatives, and commodity groups finally were in the National Farm Coalition. And they developed a bill. Incidentally, the Farm Bureau was not altogether out of it. The Louisiana Farm Bureau came to Washington and testified for the bill. The North Dakota Farm Bureau supported the bill. We had one little Farm Bureau group that had disassociated itself from the Farm Bureau, Webster County, Nebraska. They were a member of the coalition, and we had many members over the whole United States that supported it. You know, we got together, 33 farm organizations. We counted the members in that, and there were conservatively 2 million members. That's a majority of the American farmer. There were some duplicate memberships. Many of those were Farm Bureau members, because, of course, Farm Bureau members do patronize Farmers Union, Central Exchange, and GTA, and other of the cooperatives that are identified with Farmers Union. We came awfully close, thanks to George McGovern, to passing our bill. But we missed. Why? We were together, but the enemy is strong. We meet monthly in coalition efforts in Washington all the time, sometimes with the Farm Bureau on issues that we can agree on. The Smith-Melcher bill that would have increased support prices by 25% was a result of a coalition effort. It's not so. Farmers can get together, know what they want, and they can get together. Myth number 2, city people and farmers are natural enemies. This ignores the fact that many of those city people are our relatives. You know, something has been happening in this country. The 1960 census was used as the basis for redistricting the Congress of the United States. And out of that districting, which lasted for 10 years, 12 years actually, we had 235 districts, congressional districts in this country that were more than half rural. But a change was happening in the 1960s, and by the 1970 census, and we are now redistricted again, reflecting the new patterns of population in this country, Our 235 rural districts have been reduced to 85. 350 congressional districts in this country are primarily urban in nature. And if you tell farmers that the city people are our natural enemy, there's no better way to say no to us. If they're our enemy, then our goose is cooked. But it's not true. It ignores the dominant cultural trait of this country, which is rural. You know, now most of the people in the cities live outside the cities in suburbs. What's a suburb? A suburb is a pale substitute for rural living, a little space around the house, grass for the kids to play on. It's not a good substitute, but it's better than nothing. So the central cities are becoming depopulated. Why? Because people want the rural life. They believe in it. I count among my close friends some city people, some who never lived on a farm, never lived in a rural area, a couple who's school teachers in New York City, the manager of a clothing factory in New York City, an official of the U.S. Department of Labor in Los Angeles. I can't tell any difference between what those people want and what we want. They don't want bad things to happen to rural America. They want good things. This Labor Department official, and he's rather an important one, drives a government car and he has a sign in it, "Dump Nixon." I think he likes to live dangerously, but he wants what we want. To say that city people are our enemies is to ignore the dominant cultural imperative of this country. And you know that Smith-Melcher bill. Of the 172 congressmen who voted for it and passed it, 130 were from city districts. That's how we pass legislation in this country, with their help. And you've heard at national conventions, mayors of great cities who've come to our convention and said, take them home, we've got too many people. Rebuild rural America. There's great support for us. It's not true that city people and farmers are natural enemies. Myth number 3, lie number 3. The races are in perpetual and inevitable conflict. I come from the South, my friends, and I can tell you they're not in inevitable conflict. I lived in Little Rock in the time of the great school crisis, when between 150 and 200 people went into the streets and their news went around the world, but they were an incredible minority of the people of Little Rock. And I had a role in putting together a coalition there, and it was a coalition of whites and blacks. And from that day forward, from the Little Rock school crisis, we elected a new school board. And from that day forward, Orville Faubus never got a majority of the votes in the county where Little Rock is located, Pulaski County. The coalition, white and black. Every white family in the South knows at least one black family they can regard with affection. Every black family knows at least one white family they can regard with affection. This does not deny the terrible exploitation and the terrible sins that have been committed against the black race. But the fact is that the creativity in the relationships between the races is now occurring in the South, not in the North, where they're estranged and where they don't know one another. There's nothing inevitable or perpetual about the conflict between the races. We can live together. Myth number 4. People are apathetic, and it's no use to expect them to join in effective political action. Are people really apathetic? I doubt it. You know, I'm reminded of, I think I began to get an idea about apathy when our son asked for the car, for his mother's car on a Sunday afternoon to take a girlfriend riding, and he was very excited by the prospect of taking her for a ride. So he took his mother's car and for the Sunday afternoon, and we went out driving too in my car, and we were driving along the street later on that afternoon, and we met our son. And he was sitting over under the wheel, far over under the wheel, driving along, looking out the left window, and she was far over on the right side, looking out the other window. I couldn't understand it. He looked like he was apathetic, looked like he couldn't care less, and she the same. When he got home, I asked him, I said, what happened? You were so excited by the prospect of going out with this young girl. And he said, I was, and he admitted then what had happened. He had, shortly after he had picked her up, he had stopped the car and he had tried to kiss her. And of course she had turned him down. Well, he looked apathetic when he was driving down the street. He wasn't apathetic, he was frustrated. I think so many people in this country have made a pass at the system. It's turned them down, and they look apathetic. But they're not apathetic, they're frustrated. I spent the past week in the state of Kansas. We've been talking to local people in the Farmers Union in Kansas, saying to them, the day is ended when you will write resolutions at your state convention and then put them in the file for another year. We're going to do something about them. And they don't sound apathetic then. They say, well, that's different. If we can do something about our problems, we'll go. And I think there'll be a new spirit in the Kansas Farmers Union as a result. And I say to you here, your resolutions should not be filed away, but they should lead to action. If people can engage in activity that they think is worthwhile, if they can succeed, they won't be apathetic. And they won't be frustrated. Myth number 5. It is that ordinary people can't make wise political decisions. Only a privileged few can be trusted. Of all of the lies, I think this is the worst one. It comes into existence most perfectly in our foreign policy. A little handful of an elite in this country control our foreign policy. The sons of Harvard and Yale send the sons of rural America and the city ghettos to die in Vietnam. The assumption is that only a few know what's best for us. And finally we get to the peak of the triangle, and we get to the Pentagon Papers, where the people of this country were being used and it was kept a secret. We bypass the people in our political decisions in that way. We now rely on opinion polls instead of genuine political debate. You know, I come from Arkansas, and we take football very seriously down there. I foresee the day, at the rate we're going, when the Gallup poll will come into Fayetteville, where our football team is, where the Razorbacks are headquartered, and take a house poll, a sampling of how the season is going to come out, and then we'll go out to the stadium and award the trophy. And no game will ever be played. That's what we're doing now in this presidential campaign. They might as well forget the election. We're awarding it by opinion poll. Why? Because the assumption is that only a few people know what's best for the many of us. As I said, it's most perfectly demonstrated in our foreign policy. But look at the McNamaras, president of Ford Motor Company. Henry Cabot Lodge. I always think of a little rhyme from Boston where they said Boston, the home of the bean and the cod, where the lodges speak only to the Cabots and the Cabots speak only to God. Dean Rusk, Rockefeller Foundation. Averill Harriman, railroad fortune. The Kissingers and the Rostos are not the masters, they are the spokesmen for this group. President Johnson and President Nixon have not been their masters, but their they're servants of a little handful of an elite in this country who operate on the assumption that only a few know what's best for the many. And it's a lie. Myth number 6. The rich got that way because they are wiser, harder working, and more deserving than the rest of us. And so J. Paul Getty is a columnist for Playboy magazine, selling the myth of how fine and wonderful the rich are, ignoring the fact that most of them inherited their money, and some of it ill-gotten money at that. The Rockefellers, rich beyond our imagination. We had a governor in Arkansas, income $80,000 a day. He didn't earn a penny of it. They say they work long hours and they take no vacations. What are all of those great resorts on the European Riviera? What are they there for? Poor people don't go there. What are all those yachts tied off there in the blue Mediterranean? The rich, do they work? Not so. 7, myth number 7. This is a good one. Ordinary people can't provide economic security for themselves and their families. Only giant corporations can do that. Down in Kansas a week ago today, I saw thousands of acres of land being made a wasteland. It looked like the surface of the moon. Gulf Oil Company was doing it. I saw a machine you couldn't put inside this building, digging coal, strip mining, with a bucket that held 90 tons, laying waste to the land of Kansas. Don't worry, it's coming up here. I'm told that nearly 50% of the remaining coal reserves of this country are now in the Dakotas and in Montana, and is it Idaho or Utah? 4 states. They're coming your way, and they'll lay waste the land. Why do we let them do it? Well, because economic security for people is dependent on large corporations, we say, not on themselves. Here in this great land of individual opportunity, we preach the doctrine on one hand, and on the other hand they say, well, the individual can't do it. The family farmer can't do it. It's got to be Tenneco. Corporations have grown, you know. 4 years ago, 200 corporations owned 60% of the industrial assets of this country, and now it's 100 corporations in these 4 years. General Motors, Ford, AT&T, Standard Oil of New Jersey, Texaco, Gulf, IBM, those, what are that, 7 companies, earn 25% of all the profits in this country. 7 companies. The 49 largest banks in this country have boards of directors that interlock with 6,591 corporations, some of them competing corporations. They unhinge the price system totally. What's happening to the price of coal? The oil companies are buying up the coal. No accident that Gulf was the company that was doing the damage in Kansas. The oil companies buying up the coal. They own the energy sources. What's been happening to the price of coal? It's been skyrocketing. Corporations trade our wheat. 5 large corporations. You know the story on that? The wheat deal. Result of Clarence Palmby working not for the government, but for the big corporations, Continental Grain. I won't go into that in detail because you have a great speaker scheduled for tomorrow. Weldon Barton's here, and he's going to talk to you about it. He's been in the center of it. The revelation of that scandal was largely his work in the Farmers Union. But we permit that kind of thing on the assumption that only corporations can provide economic security for the people of this country. Not so. Myth number 8. If you tax corporations or expect them to deal honestly, you will kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Gulf Oil paid 1.2% taxes last year. What did you pay? What percentage did you pay? Esso, I read a story in the paper the other day, paid a lower tax rate, 5%, lower than the janitors who work in their building in New Jersey. U.S. Steel paid no taxes last year, no federal income taxes at all. And down in Gary, Indiana, the county officials are trying to get a list of their holdings so they can tax the property tax, and U.S. Steel won't give it to them. They just refuse. They're bigger than the county. They've got more troops than the county, I guess. And honest dealings. Consumer protection, one of the great disgraceful developments in our politics of this country has been occurring in recent weeks, when a group of senators have been filibustering, talking to death a Consumer Protection Act. Consumer protection, just designed to keep them honest. But they object to that. We went through the same thing trying to get the banks and credit institutions just to tell the average consumer what kind of interest rates they pay. They fought that the same way. We finally got that one through. No, you can't expect them to pay taxes, and you can't expect them to be honest, because you'll kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. It's a lie. Myth number 9. It is welfare recipients are shiftless and are cheating us all. Oh, we hear that this time. You know, it's a game we play in this country. Blame the victims, not the criminal. Blame the unfortunate. Don't look at who's really on welfare. Fred Harris of Oklahoma says, take the corporations and the rich off welfare. That's the way to get at the welfare problem. They're the ones that are getting it. You heard Jim Patton say last night, where is our heart? They've surveyed the welfare recipients of this country. They're not shiftless. They found less than 1% were able to work. An overwhelming majority are mothers with dependent children. We make a big thing in this country about how mothers ought to take care of their children. Only the welfare mothers are expected to leave their children. The rich must stay home with their children. Where is our heart? Let's stop blaming the victims and get at the root of the matter. Myth number 10. Lie number 10. It is, if you do not send your sons to die in Vietnam, the communists will take over the world. Again, you heard Jim Patton talk last night about the great Joe McCarthy myth of monolithic communism. It's a lie. It doesn't exist. Who are we protecting in Vietnam? The Bank of America and City National Bank of New York, the two great skyscrapers on the skyline of Saigon? I don't think we're protecting Americans. We have no Communist Party to speak of in this country. The Communist Party around the world is a many-sided party in disagreement with one another. There is no monolith out there. They're not coming to the shores of this country. Yet we're around the world bombing a country into insensibility, laying waste to the country. 10 myths. We are asked to worship false gods, the gods of corporate power and political privilege. We've been taught that worshiping false gods is corrupt and sinful, it's no wonder that George McGovern can charge that this is the most corrupt administration in history. 10 myths that divide us, that deceive us and divide us. It's what I say to you at this convention. Don't let these myths continue to divide us. We hear them in various forms over and over. Farmers can't get together. City people are our enemies. The races are in perpetual conflict. People are apathetic. Ordinary people can't make wise political decisions. The rich are harder working and more deserving and wiser. Ordinary people can't provide economic security for themselves. Only corporations can. And if you tax those corporations or expect them to be honest, you'll kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. And welfare recipients are shiftless and cheating us all. And finally, that you've got to send your sons to die in Vietnam or communists will take over the world. All lies. And we've got to get together. I carry in my billfold on the back of my membership card in the Farmers Union something that I think says it all for me about our need to get together and work together and create a new political force. And maybe we're about to do it. We'll know something about it November 7th, won't we? This little statement is, in our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the might of armies, magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world from the ashes of the old, for the Union makes us strong. You recognize the words from the great and stirring song by Ralph Chaplin, Solidarity Forever. Solidarity forever, for the Union makes us strong. Thank you very much.
President, fellow board of directors, and Farmers Union delegates, ladies and gentlemen, this is a real honor and a privilege for me today to introduce one of our leaders in Farmers Union. Ben, he was one of our own farmers for approximately 17
There is printed in your convention program a statement that I hope you'll take time to read sometime within the next week or two at least. I'm not going to follow it, but I want to visit with you about sort of some housekeeping of our organization, and then a couple of other things that I think that we need to talk about this afternoon. And then tonight I'll be on the program with Ed Smith, who is our National Vice President, to give you a further roundup of some of the things I think are important to the farmers of our day. Well, you've had a good year in Farmers Union as far as the balance sheet goes. As you will see from your program, and Lee will report later, we have a substantial and comfortable operating statement, which we like to see because we never know when our income will dip or when our costs might go up. And so we do like to occasionally at least have a black figure to operate from. Our educational funds have been up this year. They're good compared with recent years. And I want to thank all of our cooperatives for the fine support and cooperation that they have given us. And I might say that our association with our cooperatives has never been better. And later today and into tomorrow we will have on our program a couple of the real great leaders in the cooperative movement. And we look forward to this continued understanding with our cooperative people. Now this year we have achieved the difficult, if not the impossible, in an economy where we're losing in South Dakota approximately 1,200 farms a year. And this year, in spite of that deterioration of farm population, you have increased your South Dakota Farmers Union membership by nearly 300 members. And that, my friend, is an accomplishment in the face of the odds. Have you ever thought that by losing 1,200 farms a year, and that's what the farm census shows, you're losing the equivalent of one county of not only farm population, but one county of small business, Main Street people as well. And this is a sad commentary, and this just emphasizes what Jim Patton and Victor Ray talked about early in our program. And the main question is, who is going to control American agriculture? The conglomerates or the farmers? And in fact, who is going to control America in the future? And so, in order to maintain the kind of membership that we need in Farmers Union, we have to continue signing up down the road, enhancing our checkoffs, and all the other ways that we can put together a membership, because membership numbers are important. When we go to Pierre, our lobbyist goes to Pierre or Washington, we feel much more comfortable if we can report that we represent half the farmers in South Dakota, or half the farmers in the nation. And we need to strive toward that goal. Now, we're planning some more of these across-the-border flying membership drives this year. I wonder, are there any of you here who went to Texas last year on that flying membership drive? If you are, hold up your hand. Well, there are a couple here. Those programs were a great success, and we're hoping to conduct some more next year. And we've been using North Dakota's airplane, and maybe when Ed gets on the program tonight, he will have something to say about that flying membership campaign. We think it's a tremendous success, and I want to alert you now to get your suitcases packed. We're going to send some more of you down there, and maybe over into Illinois, and maybe out into Idaho and Utah to do some more membership work for Farmers Union, and in turn those people will come back into our state. Then I want to thank all of you for your participation in the membership campaigns and in bringing about that increase in our state membership. We've had a very successful youth program, and I just came from the Leaders' Luncheon over at the Inn, where we had what looked like 150 people, either youth leaders or supporters of the youth program, who were there to thank the leaders and to support the youth program. Each year, we have about 2,000 Farmers Union youth go through our camp and our study programs. And the Farmers Union Youth Program is, in my opinion, the best youth program that we have anywhere in rural America. We held county camps in nearly every county, youth camps. We held district camps in every district. And last December, we held a young adult seminar up in Aberdeen that included North Dakota and some youth from Minnesota. Now, I think the education people are planning another one of these seminars, and so I urge you to watch the Farmers Union paper and watch your bulletins, and if there's anyone in your community that you think should participate in that, please help us get them there, because these can be a mighty important part of the Farmers Union program. Last year I reported to you, and you met two young people who had come to work for Farmers Union during last year. And I'm sure by now you've become acquainted with Lee Swenson and Alan Burke, and will want to join me in praising them for a job well done. And in a few minutes, let's give them a hand. You know, Alan is so busy back there in the press room, but one of these times when he comes out, we'll get him up here, and so you can have a better look at him, those of you who haven't met him. And in a few minutes, we'll have Lee Swenson, our new State Secretary-Treasurer, on the program to give you his report. Our bus program has been going gun-ho again this year, and a dream came true for about 40 Farmers Union people this summer when we sent our newest bus up to Alaska. This was a 29-day trip, or about 29 days, and everything went pretty good. There's about 1,400 miles of gravel on that trip. and one motel burned down the night before they got there. And they had the bus on a train. There's one stretch of territory they went through that there are no roads, and so they put the bus on a flat car and the people in a passenger car. And I guess the bus was a little heavy for that narrow gauge railroad, and Wes sweat that one out. He thought the bus was going to fall off. And then finally they got the bus on the boat on the west coast and shipped it back down to the mainland and on home again. It was a great trip. Are there any of you here who went on that trip? Yeah, Manuel Helly went. And another, yes, and Mr. and Mrs. Caslin went. And that was a dream come true for some people. Now, we have an extensive bus program, and we want you to use it. And there's a program somewhere on the wall, a table back there promoting our bus program. Les just got back yesterday with a bus load from the New England states, the northeastern part of our country. And we'll be going again shortly to California. And later this winter, we want to go to New Orleans. And I want to invite those of you who have never been to New Orleans to go down on the old French quarters and visit Bourbon Street. Check with some of our staff and do plan to take that trip. You know, it's one of my favorite places, not Bourbon Street, but New Orleans. And every time I get down the south part of the country, I go over there. When we were in Houston, Dorothy and I took a little excursion that came home through New Orleans. It's a very lovely and attractive place to visit. We want to fill that bus up this year, so you plan on going. Now, we need your suggestions and your advice in making our travel program more meaningful and more enjoyable. So if you have some thoughts on it, leave them with some of us over at that table. Last year at our convention here in this building, you adopted in the policy program a section we called the Bold New Program. It is, in fact, a bold approach to the farm program concept that has really not been changed very much in the last 30 to 35 years. If you really stop and think about it, our farm program today is very much like the original farm program of the 1930s. Well, we have recommended a bold new approach to the farm program. And we took our program to the National Farmers Union Convention in Houston last spring and were able to sell it almost intact to the national delegates. Now, since that time, our National Farmers Union staff, with the help of technicians from the USDA, have been working on a bill draft to be ready for the 1973 Congress. Now, the present farm bill expires in 1973. So it's incumbent on this next Congress, if we're going to have a farm program, to get new farm legislation passed. But I want to tell you that it has not been and will not be easy to convince Texans, Oklahomans, or even the big Montana wheat farmers that farm program benefits should be tailored to benefit our concept of the family farm. And my friends, this is part of the problem of getting together and approving a farm program concept even in the Farmers Union family. Because you see, the concept of a family farm in Texas and a family farm in South Dakota is vastly different. And those of you who went to Texas know what I'm talking about. Earlier this fall or late summer, a meeting was held in Bailey, Colorado, attended by the presidents of most of the Farmers Union states and their boards of directors. There were about 125 or 150 of us there, and we spent part at least of 2 days trying to put together some kind of a draft of a new farm program that we could agree on based on the recommendations of the delegates at the Houston Convention. Now, I'm happy to report that group at Bailey did adopt a substantial part of the South Dakota Farmers Union program, which, as I said, was accepted almost intact by the National Farmers Union. They agreed to support a farm program that would deal in supports on the basis of units, very similar to the South Dakota program, with 100% of parity for production up to in the neighborhood of $30,000. Full payment. And that production over $30,000, or over the units that would amount to $30,000 of gross income, the program benefits would begin to decline and would be graduated down till finally they diminished. And this is in line with our recommendations. Also, it was felt that a grain reserve should be necessary, or would be necessary, for any fully adequate farm program, and that reserve should be kept on the farm in the most part, so that when, for example, a big wheat sale came up internationally, the grain would be on the farm, in the farmer's bin, instead of in the bins of Continental or Peavey or some of the big grain terminals. And we think that should be part of the program. And in order to accomplish that end, it was tentatively decided that we should have a price support program that would guarantee farmers between 65 and 100% of parity for that part of their grain that they put in storage, and then when they sold it, they would get compensatory payments amounting to the difference between their sale and 100% of parity. Now, I should say to you that there is some disagreement on at what level the price support payment should be on that part of grain that goes in storage. And there may be some discussion here today or tomorrow on that part of the proposal. And I think we need to keep an open mind on that and come up with some recommendations that we can pass along then to the National Committee, which will finally be drafting some kind of farm legislation. We do think, however, that with some patience and with some compromising, the Farmers Union family will be able to agree on a farm program concept that assures survival and the prosperity of the family farm. Our job will then only have begun, though, because the major hurdle will be, of course, to sell the program to Congress. 1973, regardless of who is elected president, will be a very crucial year for the Farmers Union. Our sign says, "Our year of decision." And make no mistake about it, this will be our year of decision on several fronts. And so I admonish each of you today to begin to get your winter chores and farm work lined up so that you can spend part of your time next winter in Washington, D.C. lobbying for a farm program. And I'm sincere about that. My guess is we're going to have not only some bus programs, but some fly-ins next winter, and maybe it'll be as late as next spring before the farm program pieces are put together, and we're going to be there. And a lot of you are going to be there. And so do plan your chores for next winter and next spring to be in Washington with us to do the lobbying job for you. Well, we've done our good job, but Pierre, as best we could under the circumstances, the makeup of the legislature, Leroy Hardy was your chief lobbyist again this year. Alan Burke and I spent some time there, and many of you were there. And believe me, there's no better lobbyist than a constituent. I don't care how high paid a lobbyist is. He can't beat a dozen constituents from the home district of one of those legislators. If you get a dozen of his constituents around him, that's the most powerful lobby that you can imagine. And we have the people to do just that. I'm not sure that we've always done it. We need to do that. Later in my report this evening, I want to talk more about our legislative programs. But I want to take this opportunity to express appreciation to all the county and local officers who have so effectively promoted Farmers Union during the past year, especially the county presidents. And tonight we have an award program for each county president where the county has exceeded has exceeded an average of the last 3 years' membership. And in the back of the auditorium, there's an honor roll hanging up over the door, and there is the list of the counties, I think 28 counties that have exceeded the last 3-year average county membership, and that's quite an accomplishment. We'll honor those county presidents tonight. I also want to thank all the co-op managers and the co-op boards of directors who have been so faithful working for the Farmers Union cause during the last years. Now, I want to conclude my remarks today with a statement that outlines the dire neglect of the legislature to deal with tax reform in the past decade, and I want to issue a call to arms of all good farmers who want tax reform. And I've released this statement to the press. South Dakota's legislative bodies for the past decade have callously disregarded their responsibility in dealing with tax reform. I call upon every farmer in South Dakota to hit the campaign trail to elect a legislature that is responsive to the needs of the people. For the last 10 years, South Dakota people have been asking for tax reform, including property tax relief. Instead, we have actually seen our property taxes increase by 50% during the past decade. Farmers, small businessmen, and senior citizens are burdened with a property tax load that not only erodes away at their income, but serves as a very real deterrent to expansion of business activity. A virtual cloud of business depression hangs over our state because of our regressive tax system, denying the people and the businesses of South Dakota the sunshine of economic prosperity. Farmers Union has carefully evaluated the voting records of each of the legislators and rated them on their performance. This rating was made available last spring and will be furnished again to anyone upon request. In addition, we are conducting a thorough voter registration drive in the rural precinct of every county and will follow through with a meticulous get-out-the-vote campaign designed to bring every eligible rural voter to the polls. Now, it's not our intention to impugn legislators who have disagreed with our position on issues, but it is our goal to elect men and women to the legislature who are sensitive to the needs of our people and will stand up and be counted on the side of rank-and-file citizens instead of special and corporate interest groups. End of statement. In conclusion, then, for this part of the program, let me say that we, as the administrators of your organization, will continue to do our best to develop and protect your interests. Farmers Union is a great organization to be a part of. Thank you for letting me be such a substantial part of yours.